Well, welcome. We're continuing our Advent season, and it's appropriately occurring in this winter time. It's an appropriate setting for Advent. Every year, the seasons of God's creation, they run through their gospel message over and over again, reminding us that death is not the end. We wait with expectation for the life that spring is coming with. And this year we again mark Advent. It's the church season that reminds us annually that spring will come, that death is not the end. And Advent is built to create with us an anticipation oriented around what happened thousands of years ago, but what we expect to happen in the future. And with what we expect, we have hope. It's to that hope that Julie, she set our minds to this hope last week, and she talked about how it reaches us, it transforms us, and it draws us towards God and the ideal that we were made for. And now we consider peace. Of any Advent topic, this is probably the one that I would like to avoid speaking on the most. Because I can often feel like peace. It feels like it's the most hopeless topic to speak on. I was part of the longest war. And that finally draws to an end. And you think, well, maybe we can have some peace in this world. But no. We look at the war with Russia and Ukraine. This year now has lit off a brutal war between Israel and Hamas. And even when things seem quiet and we think there's peace, if you look closely at the world, you will really see there are always secret wars and conflicts taking place. In this world, if there's any thread that seems as unbreakable as we put our faith in God and life, it seems that the thread of war, conflict, and atrocities is unbreakable. So to speak of hope sometimes at one level feels futile. And it's not a topic that I look forward to tackling. It's not a forward that I look forward to attempting to speak on what is an elusive idea for the world. But here I am, forced to speak on it. This isn't the first time I've spoken on it, and this won't be the last time. Because we do claim that we follow Jesus, the Prince of Peace. It kind of puts peace as a main topic to our faith. So I can't really get around not dealing with this. So we're going to look at peace as the focal point of Advent today. And Zachariah's prophecy of coming peace was read today as we lit the peace candle. Now Zach was a devout and humble priest, not like the other religious leaders that we read about in Jesus' time. And he was married to an equally devout and godly wife named Elizabeth. They were older, childless, and beyond even their childbearing years. They were in the winter of their life. And it happened one day, around 5 or 6 BC, since we have now come to realize that our calendar's a little off. It happened around 5 or 6 BC that it was the time for Zach and his group of priests to serve at the temple. And they drew lots. And Zach was the one chosen to go into the part of the temple called the holy place, right next to where God's presence dwelled. And he's going to offer incense to God. So in he goes. And he's doing his priestly thing, and suddenly he isn't alone. An angel appears to him in this room, and he is terrified. But the angel says what angels always say. Zach, it's okay. Don't be afraid. I'm here to deliver some great news to you. You're going to have a son. You will name him John, and he will be filled with the Spirit of God before he is even born. And he will pave the way for the coming Messiah. Zach hears this from an angel, and he says, how can I be sure of this? How can I be sure of what you're telling me? How do I know for sure that this is going to happen? Oh, man. How many of us, though, can feel like Zach? All the signs are there, and yet we can't believe it. It's not even that we can't believe, but perhaps we're too scared to believe, scared to hope again. And it's so hard to allow that hope to get reignited once we've let it go. Poor Zachary. The hope for him has been gone for a while. He's having a tough time accepting what the angel is saying and putting his neck on the line again with hope. And he wants a sign. How do I know? And the angel says, bruh, come on. I stand in the presence of God, and I have come to you face to face with this message. And this isn't enough? How about this is your sign? Just shut up. Just shut up. I know that you have lost hope for your own offspring. And I know that you have lost hope on behalf of Israel, who you serve as a priest. You have lost hope of any salvation. And this is scary, to renew your hope and put it on the line once more. I'm not punishing you. I'm going to give you the gift of silence. This will give you time where you don't have to answer any questions. You don't have to explain anything. It will be a time for introspection and processing of what you have just heard. How quick are we to think that when Zach is struck mute by the angel, here's just one more punishment by a God who has a history of getting angry. Zach's faith didn't measure up. And blam, punishment. And now, because we've been trained to see God this way, so many Christians today live in fear that God is not doing something for them, that they're not hearing God, they're not close to God because he is punishing them because they're struggling with their faith and doubts and questions, just like Zach had. But here's an equally plausible case from a God who told Israel out of my love and care for you, when I bring you out of Egypt, I'm going to take you the long way around to the promised land because I know you need the time to move from hopeless slave to the ability to believe in my power. So the angel tells Zach, because your hope is so far gone that you can't work up the belief in the words I've said, I see what you need. You need time to process. So here is that time that this will be your sign. It isn't a punishment, but it's a gift. How many times in pivotal moments of my life have I wished to have been gifted with silence so I could first be introspective before I go out and start talking? But I don't get gifted with silence. And I go out and I run off and I stick my foot in my mouth before I've had a chance to truly process and speak wisely. Do you see how our conditioning of an angry God can cloud how we read a passage? And then we live in fear of a God who will punish us if we, as simply a human being with emotions, have a question or a difficulty raising our hope again. If we can't raise our hope enough to just believe the angel right off the bat, God's going to take the bat and hit us. Too often we go there rather than living in the comfort of a God who loves us. And he gifts us at key times with what we need to regroup ourselves. Whether that's the time in the desert as they go the long way around, or whether it's a time of silence leading up to the birth of a miracle baby named John. So again, the angel gives Zach a sign and a gift. He gives him a time of introspection, during which period he gets to observe the power of God at work to bring life out of winter. He gets to be silently with God as a fly on the wall while he watches his wife grow in pregnancy. He gets to be silent with God as he gets to watch the joy of his wife during the baby shower. He gets to be silent with God as he gets to enjoy the moment when the birth is about to take place and the friends and family are starting to come in. This is a gifted time for Zach. We read of God, what loving father, when their kid asks them for something they need, hands them a snake. Zach said, I need a sign. God didn't hand him a beatdown of muteness. God handed him a gift of muteness. Our loving God gives good gifts. So at the end of this gifted time of renewal between Zachary and God, it's at the 8-day dedication of baby John the Baptist that Zach now gets to speak from a place of intimacy and wisdom. And he speaks a prophecy over his miracle child. Zach says, you, my miracle, you will be called the prophet of the Most High, because you will go before him to prepare the way for God. You are doing this because the dawn of heaven is here. The dawn of the Lord has come to shine upon those who sit in darkness and under the shadow of death, and to guide our feet to the path of peace. Things in creation started innocently enough. God made his celestial temple, and he set humanity down on this planet we call Earth to image him here. But humanity went down the path of judgment. They first judged that they were good, and God was bad. He was holding them back from their full potential. And on that day of judgment, humanity ate from the knowledge of good and evil. And we watched the bodies stack up as the knowledge of good and evil generally plays out in judgment. I'm pretty good, and they're the problem of evil, and we eradicate them. And so the course of the world goes to this day, with no nation being established without a trail of bodies. We live in a world that maintains the darkness and the shadow of death. But God determined that this is not the way things would stand forever. He would have mercy upon humans who had made grievous errors with the power of choice. And there runs through the First Testament thousands of years of promise. The promise moved slowly because that's how love has to move. Love is kind and love is patient. And it doesn't break arms to get its way. So it takes time. And as love slowly works its magic up to the life of Zach, the world as a whole is caught in winter, in darkness, in nighttime. The Hebrews, they have been gifted the moon and the stars of the law and the prophets to give them some illumination by which they may navigate. But it is still night in the world, and the light by which Israel works is dim. But it will not stay that way forever, because love will see its promise kept. And it comes to be that Zach gets to announce, by the mercy of God, he has kept his promise. He has not given up on us. The end of night is here, and the dawn of heaven is going to break over us. And about 6 months after this prophecy, dawn breaks. Dawn breaks in the form of a baby. Emmanuel, God with us, the Prince of Peace, the light of the world. And as Zach's prophecy tells us, the light of which everything else was a poor reflection, and it was as if we were at the darkest night, the light is now here to guide our feet to the path of peace. Into the darkness of hatred, of anger, of vengeance, into the darkness of death, where light had been suffocated out under millions of bodies. Jesus has come to bring the light back and to guide us to the path of peace. Notice, Jesus is here to guide, not to force. This is what love has been doing for the thousands of years up to Jesus. And this is only the way love will continue to do things. And it offers itself as a guide with an invitation. For all who wish to follow Jesus' light out of the world, drowning under bodies, I will light your way to the path of peace. And it's called the path of peace because peace is not a destination. Time and again, the world has talked about getting themselves out of darkness with the path to peace. If we just kill these people, it'll be the path to peace. I recently watched the movie Oppenheimer, and his thought was that if we can make this weapon with a bigger body count than ever imagined before, it will scare people into peace. This will be the path to peace. Right now, Israel has said that to achieve peace, they will lay out the bodies of Hamas and any who get caught in the crossfire in order to ensure that Hamas can never again violate peace like they did on October 7th of this year. But in the process of destroying Hamas, they are radicalizing a whole new generation of Palestinians who are watching their parents, their siblings, their children, and loved ones get plowed over on the supposed path to peace. None of it will work because peace is not a destination. And violence will not end violence. It always comes back around, even if its name has been changed and it's no longer called Nazis or ISIS or Hamas. It will come back around. There's not a way to peace. Peace is the way. The absence of open hostilities might be achieved for a time as a destination one arrives to over a lot of bodies. But that is not peace. And it never will be. It is simply hostilities pushed into the darkness, to simmer for a time, plotting under the cover of darkness, until they are again strong enough to attempt to be the ones on top again. The peace the world thinks it is achieving now is simply the simmering of bloody violence that is handed off to the grandchildren, who then must deal with the boil over of what we started cooking on the stove. And what we started cooking for our grandchildren to suffer through is what we took from the leftovers of what we were handed by those before us, who brought things down to a simmer until they boiled over on us. And they cooked with the leftovers for them. And the trail of leftovers goes all through history to the beginning of time. The bloody simmer has been going on since the moment humanity ate from the tree of judging each other. Who is good and who is evil? But a light has come to illuminate peace. The way of peace It's not what we get to, but it's how we go anywhere. Peace is how we walk. And the Prince of Peace has come to show us what that walk looks like. It looks like loving our enemies. It looks like forgiving our enemies now, even if it costs us our own blood, freely given, in order to break the cycle that will otherwise simmer until a bloody boil over on our grandchildren. It looks like enduring the worst and still speaking the words of the new creation of Jesus as he comes out of the tomb and says, "Peace be with you." You see, Jesus wasn't able to say these words because he had endured a bloody path to peace and could only now say them. We are told that through Jesus, God was reconciling the world to himself, not him to the world. And Jesus kicks off a new creation with these words because he says, "I have always been at peace with you because that is how I walk. And now you know it. I placed myself into the very flesh of humanity so that you could see and hear me loving you, even with forgiveness and peace as you killed me. I did this so that once and for all, it would be stamped indelibly on history that I am at peace with you. I came and walked the path of peace all the way to my lynching in order to disarm any notion that I'm other than at peace with you. So we anticipate Christmas on this Advent Sunday of peace. We anticipate the moment that the mercy of a loving God, who is true love, because what else could have patience for thousands of years to not give up on humanity, to not just break our arms, and to work as long as needed to bring its promises to fulfillment. So we anticipate this moment that the mercy of a loving God a couple thousand years ago broke dawn upon the horizon of the world. Dawn broke in a little baby. God with us, not God at war against us. It is God with us, for us, as he has always been. And he came as the Prince of Peace to blaze the trail of peace so that we can then follow his illumination from the darkness to walk as he walked in the way of peace. The rest of the world does not yet live in peace, and there's still darkness out there. But we have followed the light to the path of peace so that we can live in peace no matter what the world decides to keep on doing. We live in peace to continue to be the light, to guide others to the way of peace. But Pastor, come on. How far do we take this in our life? How far do we go in peace? What does this look like? It's been a hotly contested issue. And I'm not going to solve it for you today. But I want to show you how far it can go. In 1959, Father Christian became a missionary to the Muslim world. And he knew his life was always in danger. He founded a group in Algeria that facilitated regular meetings for mutual respect between Christians and Muslims. Danger always loomed around the corner for him. And on one occasion, a Muslim friend of Father Christian defended the father at the cost of his own life. In the mid-1990s, Father Christian was told in his spirit that his time was coming to an end and he would be violently killed. He could have sought to prepare to defend himself. He could have fled. But he chose to stay as a light of peace against the dark world. And he wrote a letter forgiving his future killers. He sealed it and he left it with his mom to be opened upon his death. Sure enough, shortly after he wrote the letter, in 1996, he was killed by Muslims. His letter was opened, and this is what it read. If it should happen one day, and it could be today, that I become a victim of the terrorism that now seems to encompass all the foreigners living in Algeria, I would like my community, my church, my family to remember that my life was given to God and to Algeria, and that they accept, speaking of his community, his church, and his family, he prays that they would accept that the sole master of all life was also not a stranger to such a brutal departure. I would like, he said, when the time comes, to have a space of clearness that would allow me to beg forgiveness of God and forgiveness of my fellow human beings. And at the same time, to forgive with all my heart the one who I already know will strike me down. I could not desire such a death. It seems to me important to say this. How could I rejoice if the Algerian people I love were indiscriminately accused of my murder? My death, obviously, will appear to confirm to those who hastily judged me as naive or idealistic. Let him now tell us what he thinks. But they should know that for this, my life lost, I give thanks to God. In this thank you, which is said for everything in my life from now on, I certainly include you, my last minute friend, who does not know what you're doing when you kill me. I commend you, my killer, to the God of whose face I still see in you. And I look forward to finding each other happy and good thieves in paradise. If it pleases God, the Father of us both. This is how far the way of peace can be walked out. To consider one's killer your last minute friend. To intend ahead of time to return love for violence received. Refusing to be part of passing on the cauldron of simmering blood to kids and grandkids. To look forward to the day that one is united again with their killer, who in their dark ignorance didn't know what they were doing. United with their killer when night no longer exists and all of God's children are bound in love. As Jesus anticipates his impending death, much like Father Christian, the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke record that Jesus left his followers with the act of communion, by which we remember Jesus' life and death. But the Gospel of John doesn't speak of Jesus leaving us an act of communion. Rather, John looks to Jesus saying, "As I go to my death, I leave you with my peace." For John, the act of communion and true peace, the peace of God, communion and peace are one and the same for John. Because communion shows a body and blood that is freely given up in the refusal to be one more participant in the cycle of darkness over our world. It is a body and blood given up in the endeavor to prove and light the way to a different way, the way of peace. In communion is the body and blood given up freely to be a light with an invitation to guide even someone's last minute friend to the way of peace. Communion stands as our challenge to how far peace can be taken.